The land was wide, silent, and endless. The prairie stretched far into the horizon, where the sky met the earth in a line so thin it almost seemed to tremble. The sun hung above like a fiery coin, unyielding and merciless, beating down upon the frontier town. Dust clung to every corner on the wooden porches, along the wagon wheels, even in the folds of the settlers' clothes. It was a summer afternoon that seemed to still the air itself, the kind of day where every step raised small clouds of dirt that lingered before slowly falling back to the ground. The settlement was alive with faint movement, the creak of doors, the muffled laughter of children, the distant bark of a dog, but even these sounds seemed muted by the thick heat. In the middle of this dry stillness was a boy, no more than 4 years old. His bare feet patted softly against the warm earth as he wandered near the road. His shirt, patched and faded from countless washes, was too big for his small body and hung loosely around his shoulders. His knees were scratched from climbing over logs and chasing after chickens earlier in the day. A halo of golden brown hair stuck to his forehead, dampened by sweat and the dust he had stirred up in play. Yet his eyes shone brightly, unclouded by hardship, carrying that innocence that only a child, untouched by the weight of the world, could carry. In his hands, gripped with the unshakable devotion of youth, was a toy horse. It was not grand, not polished like the toys of city children described in the stories his mother sometimes read to him. Instead, it was something far more precious. His father had carved it by hand during a winter evening when snow piled thick against the cabin walls. With only a small knife and patience born of long nights, his father had shaped it from a block of wood, whittling away splinters until the rough figure began to resemble a horse. Though uneven, with legs slightly mismatched and a head that tilted to one side, the boy adored it. His father had painted it with the little paint they could spare, brown for the body, black for the mane, and tiny white specks across the back that looked like stars scattered across the night sky. For the boy, this horse was not just wood, it was magic. It galloped through every adventure he imagined, leaped over mountains only he could see, and listened when he whispered secrets into the night. The toy was his treasure. He slept with it under his blanket, carried it in his pocket, and never let it leave his side. Whenever fear crept in, when storms rattled the cabin, or when coyotes howled in the dark, the horse was his comfort. It reminded him of his father's hands, of the quiet love behind the rough carving, of the stories his father told him about real horses that ran wild and free across the plains. To part with it seemed impossible. Yet, on that hot afternoon, something happened that would test the weight of even a child's treasure. Near the road, standing in the shade of a leaning fence post, was another boy. He was about the same age, but he carried himself differently. His skin was darker, kissed deep by the sun. His long black hair fell freely around his face, strands moving with the faintest breeze. His eyes, dark and steady, followed the movements of the settlers' children playing nearby. Their laughter filled the air as they chased each other, tossing stones, shouting, and tumbling across the dusty ground. Yet he did not join them. He stood apart, silent, his small hands empty at his sides. His clothes, simple and made of hide, marked him as someone not from the settlement. He was a native boy, from the tribe that lived beyond the ridge, where the land folded into hills and the river wound its silver path through the grass. The cowboy's son watched him curiously. He had seen natives before, always at a distance, when his father traded furs or when the tribe's riders passed near the settlement. But this was the first time he had been so close to a child from their people. The boy's face held no threat, no anger. Instead, there was a quiet sadness. In his eyes, a longing that the young settler could not name but felt deeply. He saw how the native boy's gaze lingered on the others, the children laughing, the children with toys, the children who belonged. It was a look that pierced the young cowboy's heart, though he was too little to explain why. He only knew the feeling, loneliness. He recognized it, for he had felt it himself in moments when his own laughter went unheard, or when older children excluded him from their games. He looked down at his wooden horse, held tightly in his hands. It was his dearest possession, the one thing he loved most. His fingers curled around it, unwilling to let go. Yet as he raised his eyes again to the native boy standing alone, a strange warmth grew inside him. It was small, like the flicker of a candle, yet steady. It told him something simple. He has nothing. I have something I can share. The thought was pure, untouched by fear or prejudice. At 4 years old, he did not see the world's divisions. He did not see a native and a settler. He only saw another child, standing with empty hands. The decision came without hesitation, as natural as breathing. The little cowboy's son began to walk. His small feet kicked up tiny puffs of dust with each step. Around him, the laughter of the other children dimmed as if the world itself had grown quiet, holding its breath. The native boy's eyes widened as he watched the settler child approach. He stiffened, perhaps expecting mockery or cruelty, for he had known such things before. Yet he did not move away. He stood rooted to the ground, waiting, unsure. The cowboy's son stopped in front of him. His heart beat quickly, not with fear, but with the nervous courage of one about to give away something precious. With both hands, he lifted the toy horse and held it out. His lips curved into a shy smile, his eyes filled with kindness. No words were spoken, for he did not know what to say, but the gesture was clear. The native boy stared at the wooden horse. For a moment, he did not reach out. His dark eyes shifted from the toy to the boy holding it, as if searching for the trick, the cruelty that might follow. But he found only sincerity. Slowly, with trembling fingers, he extended his hands. His skin brushed against the smooth wood as he took the horse, clutching it carefully, almost reverently, as though it were made of glass. His chest rose and fell quickly, his breath caught between disbelief and wonder. The settler boy's smile widened. He stepped back, his hands now empty, his heart strangely light. He did not feel the sting of loss, though his most cherished possession was no longer his. Instead, he felt warmth, a joy unlike anything else. He had given something that mattered, and in giving, he had found something greater. The native boy held the horse close, pressing it against his chest. His lips parted, but no words came. His eyes glistened, reflecting sunlight and something deeper, gratitude, awe, and perhaps the first flicker of friendship. The silence between them spoke louder than any words. It was not just a toy that had passed from one child to another. It was trust, freely given. It was the beginning of something neither fully understood but both would remember. And so, on that hot afternoon, in the dust of the frontier town, two children from two worlds stood facing each other. The toy horse rested in new hands, the bond of kindness glowing between them. No one else knew it then, but that small act carried a weight far beyond its simplicity. It was the start of a story that would be told for years to come, the story of how a 4-year-old's gift planted the seed of peace between people divided by history. The sun had already begun its slow descent when the wooden horse changed hands, painting the sky in shades of amber and pale gold. While the two boys stood silently bound by their new connection, others watched from afar. The world of the frontier was never truly empty. Even when moments seemed private, eyes were often present, hidden in the folds of shadow or the sweep of grass. So it was on this day, when a quiet group of native elders stood just beyond sight, sheltered beneath the tall cottonwoods that marked the edge of the settlement. They had not come openly, for it was not their way to intrude upon the settlers' space without reason. Instead, they had ridden near in the late morning, dismounted, and remained in the shade to observe. The elders were men of deep years, their faces weathered with lines carved by wind, hardship, and wisdom. Their hair was long, streaked with gray and bound in braids, their eyes sharp and patient, like eagles that had seen the rise and fall of many seasons. Each carried the silence of his people, a silence that spoke louder than words, for in their world, listening was the first path to understanding. They had expected little from this visit. Perhaps they wished only to see how the settlers' children grew, how the families lived, how the balance between their people and the newcomers was holding. But what they witnessed instead was something rare, something that stirred them deeply. They saw the little cowboy's son step forward with the horse clutched in his small hands. They saw the hesitation, the moment of decision, and then the giving, the letting go of something dearly loved. And they saw the way the native boy received it, his face breaking into wonder as though the sky itself had opened above him. The elders did not move, did not speak, yet in their hearts, they felt the weight of what had happened. For many years, they had watched the settlers expand, bringing cabins, fences, and wagons into lands that once stretched unbroken. There had been quarrels, fights, and uneasy treaties. There had been nights of mistrust, where every sound carried the threat of conflict. The elders knew these things well. They had seen their own children look with suspicion at the settler children, and they had seen the settlers keep their distance from the tribe. For so long, the two peoples had lived side by side but apart, separated by invisible walls of history. In fear, but here, before their eyes, a wall had been crossed, not by men with weapons, or by chiefs with solemn words, but by a child, barely old enough to understand the meaning of his actions. That was what made it powerful. The boy had no reason to give away his most prized possession. He had no lesson to teach, no agreement to make. His heart had spoken in the way only a child's heart could, simple, pure, unclouded by prejudice. And in that moment, the elders saw more wisdom than many grown men ever carried. When the sun dipped lower and the children scattered to their homes, the elders remained in silence. Each of them thought of the stories told by their ancestors, stories of signs and omens, of how the smallest acts sometimes revealed the greatest truths. One elder, the oldest among them, finally broke the silence with a single nod. His voice, when it came, was soft, yet steady. "The spirits speak through children," he said. "Today, we have seen their voice." That night, when they returned to the camp, the story spread like fire across dry grass. Around the fires, in the lodges, in the whispers between families, the tale was retold. A settler child had given his most treasured toy to one of their own. At first, some were skeptical. Why would a child of the settlers, who so often clung to what was theirs, give freely? But as the elders repeated what they had witnessed, their certainty could not be denied. The tribe listened, and slowly the skepticism gave way to wonder. Mothers spoke softly to their children, reminding them that kindness still lived in unexpected places. Warriors, hardened by past conflicts, shook their heads but could not hide the glimmer of hope in their eyes. The small wooden horse became more than a toy that night. In the minds of the people, it became a symbol. It was a reminder that not all bridges had to be built by chiefs or leaders. Some could be built by the hands of children, by innocence untainted by the burdens of the past. Around the fires, elders told the story with reverence, how a boy with nothing to gain had given and how that gift carried the promise of peace. For the native boy himself, sleep did not come easily. He lay curled beneath the soft furs in his family's lodge, the wooden horse pressed close against his chest. The carved figure was small, but to him it felt heavy, as though it carried meaning far beyond its size. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw again the settler boy's face, the shy smile, the outstretched hands. He remembered the warmth of that moment, the way it had filled him with something he had not known before, belonging. The horse was not just a toy, it was proof that he had been seen, not as an outsider, but as a friend. Meanwhile, in the settler's cabin, the cowboy's son drifted into dreams without his wooden horse for the first time since it had been carved. His small hands were empty, but his heart was full. He did not miss the toy as he thought he would. Instead, he carried within him the memory of the native boy's smile, a treasure greater than wood or paint. He slept soundly, unaware that his simple choice had already begun to echo far beyond what he could imagine. By dawn, the elders had resolved that this act should not fade into silence. It was not just a child's whim. It was a message, one that carried the potential to heal wounds and soften hardened hearts. They spoke of it to the chief, who listened with careful eyes and a solemn expression. The chief understood. He, too, had seen how small acts sometimes shape the future more than great battles. A wooden horse, he said, but in truth, it is more than wood. It is a gift of peace. And so, in the hearts of the tribe, the boy's action took root. The toy horse was remembered not as a child's trinket but as a bridge. It reminded them that kindness could come from unexpected places, that even among those they feared or mistrusted, there could be goodness that began not with treaties but with the heart of a child. That night, and many nights after, the story was told again and again, passed from one voice to another, until it became more than memory. It became a legend in the making. Proof that even in times of division, the wisdom of children could lead the way where adults had failed. Morning came softly to the frontier. The sky turned from pale gray to glowing gold as the sun rose over the endless prairie, lighting the fields and painting the cabins with its first touch of warmth. The air was cool at first, carrying the smell of dew, but already hints of heat whispered in the breeze, promising another long, hot day. The little cabin stood quietly against the open land, smoke drifting from its chimney where the boy's mother was already at work preparing the morning meal. Chickens clucked lazily near the fence, and a dog stretched, yawning wide, before padding across the yard to sniff the ground. Inside the cabin, the 4-year-old stirred awake. His small hands searched instinctively for the wooden horse, as they had every morning before, but found only the rough texture of the blanket. He blinked sleep from his eyes, remembering the horse was gone. But instead of sadness, a small smile grew on his lips. The memory of the native boy's eyes, shining with gratitude, filled him with warmth. He sat up, his heart lighter than it had ever been, as though giving had somehow made him bigger inside. The day began like any other. His father stepped outside to fetch water from the barrel, his boots thudding against the porch. His mother moved with steady rhythm, her hands busy but her mind sharp, always alert to the sounds of the land. Yet even as the family carried on with their routine, something unusual was already unfolding in the distance. Far beyond the cabin, where the prairie rolled into gentle hills, faint shapes moved against the horizon. At first, they were only shadows, silhouettes blurred by the morning haze. But as they drew nearer, the sound reached the cabin, the steady, rhythmic pounding of hooves. Horses. The dog pricked its ears and barked sharply, running to the edge of the yard. The father straightened, squinting toward the hills. A line of riders was approaching, their figures growing clearer with each passing moment. The mother stepped to the doorway, her hands tightening on her apron. "Who is it?" she asked softly. The father's jaw tightened. He knew the answer before the riders even came into focus. These were not settlers. The feathers that caught the light, the proud bearing of the men on horseback, the way they rode, in formation, all of it spoke clearly. They were from the tribe. As the riders came closer, dust rose behind them in golden clouds. The boy, small and curious, ran to the porch, his bare feet thumping against the wooden boards. His eyes widened with wonder as he saw the horses, their strong bodies gleaming in the morning sun, their riders tall and straight. To him, it was not a threat. It was something marvelous, almost magical. But his parents' faces were heavy with unease. Encounters like these were rare, and they often carried tension. The riders slowed as they reached the cabin, their horses' hooves stamping the earth, sending up small puffs of dust. Silence settled, broken only by the snorts of the animals and the creak of leather saddles. The father moved subtly in front of his wife and child, a protective barrier. His hand hovered near the axe by the chopping block, though he did not reach for it. He knew better than to show aggression. Still, his body was stiff, ready. Then the riders dismounted. One by one, the men swung gracefully from their saddles, their movements calm and deliberate. They were elders, not warriors. Their age showed in the lines of their faces, the streaks of gray in their braids, the weight of wisdom in their eyes. Their clothing was decorated with beads and feathers, their presence dignified and commanding, yet peaceful. The boy's father narrowed his eyes, trying to read their intent. He expected demands for land, for goods, perhaps for reparation of some insult. The mother held the boy close, her heart pounding, unsure of what was about to unfold. But the elders gave no sign of hostility. Instead, they gathered in a quiet semicircle before the porch. One elder, taller than the rest, and with hair as white as snow, stepped forward. For a moment, he simply looked at the boy. His dark eyes softened, and he lowered himself slowly to one knee so that he could meet the child at eye level. The little cowboy's son blinked up at him, unafraid. To him, there was no reason to fear. The elder reached into his arms and brought forth a bundle wrapped in deer hide. The bundle was small, yet clearly heavy, tied with leather cords and decorated with beads. Carefully, with both hands, the elder extended it toward the boy. The settler's parents froze in disbelief. The father's breath caught, his body tense with confusion. He had prepared himself for conflict, but this was entirely unexpected. The mother's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. She could only watch as her son, innocent and trusting, stepped forward. His tiny hands reached out, and with all the gravity of the moment, the elder placed the bundle into them. The boy looked down at it, his fingers tracing the smooth deer hide. It was heavier than he imagined, weighted with something important. His eyes lifted again to the elder's face. There was kindness there, and something deeper, respect. The boy smiled shyly, though he did not yet understand the meaning of what he held. The parents could do nothing but watch. The world seemed to have shifted under their feet. Whatever this was, it was no ordinary exchange. The air itself carried the weight of ceremony, of significance greater than their cabin walls had ever held. The elder, still kneeling, spoke at last in a voice low and solemn. Though his words were in his own tongue, the meaning was clear enough through his tone and his gestures. This was no demand. This was no punishment. It was a gift, a recognition of what the boy had given the day before. The little cowboy's son clutched the bundle against his chest, his small arms straining to hold it. His parents exchanged a glance, their fear replaced slowly by awe. They had expected anger, yet what they saw instead was honor, respect offered to their child by men whose wisdom stretched back generations. The elder rose to his feet, nodding once in solemn acknowledgement. Around him, the other elders bowed, their heads briefly, as though marking the moment with silent reverence. They had come not to take, but to give. They had come to show that a wooden horse, a child's toy, had carried meaning far beyond its small form. And in that golden morning light, with dust settling around them and silence heavy in the air, a new bond was sealed. One child had given, and now the elders gave in return. The bundle was more than hide, more than beads, more than weight. It was a promise, carefully prepared, filled with meaning deeper than any toy could ever hold. The boy sat on the porch, the weight of the bundle in his lap. His small fingers, clumsy but eager, worked at the leather cords that tied it together. Each tug loosened the knot, each movement watched carefully by the circle of elders who stood. In solemn silence, his parents stood close behind, uncertain whether to intervene, but something in the elders' calm faces held them still. This moment was not to be broken. But finally, with one last pull, the deer hide fell open. The morning sun struck the object inside, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to pause. Nestled within the folds of soft hide was a horse, carved from dark wood, its surface polished until it gleamed like water under sunlight. The lines of the carving were strong yet gentle, the proud arch of the neck, the powerful stance of the legs, the flowing detail of the mane. It was not crude, it was art. The boy gasped softly, his eyes widening as he lifted it with both hands. It was heavier than his old toy, sturdier, carrying a sense of permanence. Where his wooden horse had been simple and childlike, this one carried the touch of generations, the careful work of hands that shaped not just wood, but meaning. The elders watched him intently, their expressions unreadable but their eyes shining with something ancient and powerful. One of them stepped forward and placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. In slow, deliberate gestures, he explained. The horse was not merely a plaything. It was a symbol of strength, of journey, of freedom, but also of trust and friendship. It was a gift that carried weight far beyond its wooden form. The boy looked up, blinking, not fully grasping the words, but sensing the depth of them in the elder's tone. He hugged the horse close to his chest, as if afraid it might vanish. His small heart swelled with wonder, with a feeling he did not yet have words for. Behind him, his parents exchanged a look. Slowly, realization dawned. Their son's innocent act, the simple giving of a toy horse to another child, had spoken louder than years of cautious distance, of unspoken tension between settlers and tribe. What they had not been able to bridge with words, their boy had bridged with kindness. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. The father, usually stern and guarded, felt something loosen in his chest. He had feared this encounter, but now he saw that it was not a confrontation. It was an offering, and it had been sparked not by trade, not by negotiation, but by the open hand of a child. The elders spoke softly among themselves, their voices low and rhythmic, like the sound of wind in the grass. Then the oldest among them turned again to the boy's parents. He spoke in halting English, his words careful but clear. Your son he gave from heart. We see this. We return gift, not toy, symbol. Horse carries friendship. Horse carries trust. He is bridge. The father swallowed hard, his throat tight. He nodded slowly, his hand finding his wife's. Neither of them spoke, for no words seemed sufficient. The boy, meanwhile, turned the wooden horse over and over in his hands, marveling at its smoothness, its weight, the way it seemed alive somehow, as if it carried stories within its grain. He did not understand all that was happening, but he felt something special, a connection, a bond forming around him like unseen threads pulling two worlds closer together. The elders began to step back, their task complete, but before they left, the white-haired leader bent once more, meeting the child's gaze with deep reverence. He pressed two fingers gently to his own chest, then pointed to the boy, then to the wooden horse. The meaning was simple, unmistakable. This bond lives in you now. The boy nodded with all the solemnity a 4-year-old could muster, clutching the horse tightly as though vowing never to let it go. As the elders mounted their horses once more, the morning air seemed different. It carried not tension, but peace. The hooves thudded softly as they rode away, their figures shrinking against the golden horizon. Yet the silence they left behind was not empty. It was full of promise, full of hope. The parents remained on the porch, still stunned. The boy sat cross-legged with the horse in his lap, tracing every carved line as if learning a secret language. In that moment, the settlers understood. Their son had been given something far greater than a toy. He had been entrusted with a role, one that would shape the future more than any land, fence, or weapon ever could. From that day forward, word spread quietly across the settlement and the tribe alike. Stories began to form of a child whose small act of kindness had softened hearts, hardened by generations of mistrust. He was no longer just the settler's boy. He was something else now, a symbol, a bridge. And though he did not yet know it, the wooden horse he held would become more than a memory of that morning. It would be a reminder that even the smallest hand, when opened in kindness, can carry the weight of peace between worlds.